think I'm most excited right now about the fact that people are listening. Is that we've spent so long in a world where people are just reacting to whatever is happening, what the latest product is, what the latest fad is, what the latest craze is. And I think for the first time, we're seeing pretty much across the board, everybody's starting to realize their own part in how we're shaping the world and starting to empower themselves to realize that they have a lot of control as to where our future goes versus viewing it as something that just happens to them. The most important change we're seeing with technology nowadays is that we're actually trying to use it in order to connect people together in ways that we've never seen before. And what it's doing is it's changing us from a world where every company and every individual plays a role kind of in a set game, is that instead, by constantly changing what's happening, it's forcing people to essentially create relationships instead of roles. And once it becomes about a relationship between you and me, it's more important that the technology is connecting us to make sure we're on the same page and pushing towards that same goal, towards that same change, than it is making sure that each of us is playing our own role properly. We've been talking about businesses and companies going through a digital transition, to transform themselves. But the reality is that that's happening to every aspect of our society. Our consumers are transforming themselves into this digital-based consumer, which means that they kind of understand what's going on. They see the connections they have and they see their lives changing. The workforce realizes that technology is fundamentally a part of not only their day-to-day job, but the skills that they're going to need to survive and thrive into the future. Governments are seeing technology as the way to interact with the population, to manage their economy, to shape what their society is going to be next. We're now no longer companies who have an expertise talking to people who don't understand what's going on. You're talking about an entire society that now has matured themselves, and so it's becoming a real conversation and a real collaboration to figure out, now that we have all this opportunity, now that people have the power to shape our lives, to shape our realities, what do we want to do with that? And some of those realities have a lot of fear in them. Some of them have a lot of opportunity. But the fact that we care enough to have those conversations, I think, is one of the optimistic looks, the optimistic feelings that we have, that says we have the opportunity to not let this be something that's decided for us, that on whim or chance just happens to come. We're actively going to have these conversations to create a world that's going to be one shaped by us, and I think that's relatively unique, in our human history. I think what I'm most excited about is the fact that we are changing, I think, the relationships that we have with each other, but I think in a much more positive way. Part of my job is to talk to government officials, companies, individuals, you name it, in any industry, in different parts of the world. And what you find out is the very first descriptions that people give you of themselves is what role they play within the company, what their specific job is, what box they've pushed themselves into and what constraints that they have around it. And that's how we've always ruled. That's how we've always viewed the world. And what that has done is it's created these really interesting viewpoints where people see themselves in these boxes and their goal is trying to optimize what they can do within that box. But because of that, you see companies trying to get away with things because of what the regulation and the governments have boxed around them. You see employees trying to get away with things with the constraints that their company has put on them. You see consumers doing the same thing. And then even from the same standpoint, you see companies, and employees, butting heads. You see companies and consumers butting heads over what's right and what's fair within these constrained environments. But now that things are changing, and they're changing quickly, is that we're starting to interconnect with each other in different ways. And what we're seeing is that in order to actually move faster, in order to change, you have to change the individual, the company, the government, and the population all at the same time. And so as long as you're in that almost adversarial relationship, nothing changes, because a company can be farther looking, but if nobody adopts their projects, nobody's interested. A government can put out new regulations, and if they don't work, companies will leave for other countries. The interconnectivity that we have for all of this is starting to tie us together, that we're just now starting to see people view not I have a company and a consumer as a faceless set of transactions, but rather a relationship that says, what do I as a business owe you as a consumer in order to be able to sell you these experiences and shape your life? And a consumer similarly goes back to say what are the things that I need out of this relationship, and can I trust or entrust with you the data that I have? All of these things kind of combine together into this really interesting mix where I think we've got an opportunity to use the fact that we're all in this together, and we can see those connections now as a way for us to start shaping things that aren't just a benefit for one group or another, which is what we're doing now, but rather trying to figure out how we change the whole system so it benefits everybody.